The first sign that something irreversible had begun was not an explosion, not a speech, not even a headline, it was silence. At 3:17 a.m., the vast, restless waters of the Strait of Hormuz seemed to hold their breath. The usual hum of tankers, the low groan of engines pushing crude oil across continents, the chatter of radios in multiple languages, all of it slowed into a strange, unnatural quiet. Then, almost like a ripple spreading across glass, ships began to halt, one by one, reluctantly, as if an invisible hand had pressed pause on the heartbeat of global trade. Captain Reza Maktoum stood on the bridge of his tanker, Al Noor, his weathered hands gripping the railing as he stared out into the darkness. He had spent 30 years navigating these waters, long enough to know every current, every hidden tension beneath the surface. But this was different. Why are we stopping? His young first officer Bilal asked, his voice tight with unease. Reza didn't answer immediately. He was listening to the silence, to the crackling radio, to the faint unease that had begun to settle in his chest. Then the message came. A calm, measured voice, translated into multiple languages, cut through the static. All vessels are advised to hold position. This is a coordinated maritime directive. Further instructions will follow. No threats. No chaos, just control. And that was what made it terrifying. Thousands of miles away, in a glass-walled office overlooking the skyline of Shanghai, Lin Wai didn't blink as she watched the same moment unfold on a dozen screens. Satellite feeds, shipping data, live economic indicators, all converging into a single, undeniable truth. The world had just shifted. Lin Wai had not always been here. 10 years earlier, she was a scholarship student from a small coastal town, raised by a fisherman who taught her that the sea gives but only to those who respect it. She had dreamed not of power, but of stability. A world where markets didn't collapse overnight, where families didn't lose everything because of decisions made oceans away. But somewhere along the way, her dream had evolved. Now she was one of the architects behind a bold and controversial initiative, a strategic maritime framework designed to stabilize one of the most critical choke points in global trade. Critics had called it overreach. Some had whispered a darker word, control. Lin preferred a different term, responsibility. Behind her, her colleague Zhang Rui paced nervously. The Americans will respond, the Europeans too. This won't stay quiet for long. Lin finally turned, her expression calm but not cold. It doesn't need to stay quiet, it just needs to stay controlled. But stopping traffic in Hormuz, that's not stabilization, that's a shockwave. Lin looked back at the screens, where red dots representing halted vessels clustered like a warning signal. Sometimes, she said softly, you have to stop the system to reset it. Back on the Al Noor, the tension thickened as minutes stretched into an hour. Bilal tried to sound brave. Maybe it's just a technical delay. Reza shook his head. No, this is deliberate. He thought of his daughter, Amina, studying engineering in Karachi. He had promised her something better, a future where she wouldn't have to rely on unpredictable tides and fragile economies. Every voyage he took was for her, and now, for the first time, he felt that promise slipping. On shore in Dubai, another story was unfolding. Sarah Haddad, a logistics analyst known for her razor-sharp instincts, sat frozen in front of her laptop as her models began to collapse. Supply chains she had spent years optimizing were unraveling in real time. Oil prices surged, shipping costs spiked, and delivery timelines turned into guesswork. Her phone buzzed incessantly, clients, colleagues, reporters. What's happening? One message read. Sarah didn't have an answer yet. But she had a feeling. This wasn't a disruption. This was a message. Hours turned into a day, and the world finally caught up to the silence that had begun in the strait. Headlines exploded across screens, debates ignited, and governments scrambled to respond. But the ships remained still. In Shanghai, Lin Wei faced her first real test. International pressure mounted, accusations flew, some called it a power grab, others a dangerous gamble. Even within her own team, doubts surfaced. Zhang confronted her late that night. "Do you understand what you've started? This could trigger a global crisis." Lin's composure cracked just for a moment. "And what if the crisis was already there?" she replied. "What if the system we've been trusting is already broken?" Zhang fell silent, because deep down he knew she might be right. Meanwhile, aboard the Al-Noor, Reza made a decision. "We can't just sit here," he told Bilal. "We need answers." Against protocol, he reached out on a private channel, connecting with captains from other ships. Voices filled the air, confused, angry, afraid. "We're being controlled. No one is telling us anything. This isn't just about oil, it's about power." Reza listened, then spoke. "Whatever this is, we face it together." It was a small moment, but in that vast, uncertain silence, it mattered. Back in Dubai, Sarah finally saw the pattern. She traced the data, followed the flow of halted shipments, analyzed the timing. And then it clicked. "This isn't random," she whispered. "It's strategic positioning." Her colleague leaned in. "Positioning for what?" Sarah looked at the screen, where new shipping routes previously underutilized began to light up. A new order. The climax came not with a bang, but with a statement. Lin Wei stepped before the cameras, her voice steady as the world watched. "This initiative is not about control," she said. "It is about resilience. For too long, global trade has depended on fragile systems vulnerable to conflict, disruption, and imbalance. Today, we begin a transition toward a more stable and cooperative framework." The words were carefully chosen, but their impact was seismic. Some believed her. Many didn't, but one thing was certain. The old way was gone. Days later, the ships in the Strait of Hormuz began to move again. Slowly, carefully, Captain Reza felt the engines hum beneath his feet, a sound that had never meant so much. Bilal smiled for the first time in days. "We're moving," he said. Reza nodded, but his gaze remained distant. "Yes," he replied, "but not in the same world." In Dubai, Sarah watched as her models stabilized, different, but functional. She leaned back, exhausted but thoughtful. "This changes everything," she said. Her colleague asked, "Is that good or bad?" Sarah paused. "Depends on who adapts." In Shanghai, Lin Wei stood alone in her office, the city glowing beneath her. For all the power she now held, there was a quiet weight in her chest. She thought of her father, of the sea, of the simple life she once knew. Had she protected the future or rewritten it, she didn't have the answer. But as the world adjusted to a new rhythm, one truth became clear. Change doesn't always arrive with chaos. Sometimes it comes with silence and leaves behind a storm no one can ignore. And in that silence, the lesson lingered. The world belongs not to those who control it, but to those who understand it, and have the courage to reshape it when it no longer works.